and welcome to this afternoon's meeting of the full council. The meeting is being live streamed to the council's YouTube channel. Welcome to any members of the public who are watching the meeting remotely. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years. If you are present and making a representation to the meeting, you are consenting to this and to the use of the recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Do we have any members of the public present? Is that right?
Member staff.
Member staff?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, so it's not member.
I think so. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, we have. We've got Mr. Ridgewell and Mr. Harmon.
I can read that, thank
Yeah.
Okay, as we do have members of the public present, I need to read out the following paragraph. Welcome to everyone in the public gallery. As you will be aware, temporary measures have recently come into force to increase security at council meetings. Whilst this is regrettable and the council remains committed to making decisions in open session, it is essential that meetings and council business can be carried out through safely, efficiently and without disruption. In the event of a persistent disturbance, I will have no option but to adjourn the meeting and ask those causing the disruption to be escorted from the chamber so the council can continue to effectively take the decisions required. Please be aware that CCTV and audio recording is now in operation and the footage and recordings will be held by the council for 5 months. And finally, please also note that a fire alarm test is not expected. So if your alarm does sound, you should make your way to the nearest fire exit immediately. Thank you. So we're now going to the meeting proper. First of all, we have apologies, quite a few apologies. Councillor Barnes, Councillor Beale, Councillor Boys, Councillor Chandler, Councillor Clucas, Councillor Joy, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Sankey and Councillor Willingham. Any additional apologies? Nope. Okay, thank you. And then we have item 2, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest from members? Nope. Okay. Item 3 then, minutes of the last meeting, pages 3 to 8. Do any members have any comments on the meeting, on the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of July? Councillor Pinniger.
Just to say that the graffiti section, the antisocial behaviour is mentioned, but part of the discussion in the meeting was to separate that from the criminal damage because, you know, criminal damage is a police matter and antisocial behaviour is something we work with. So that isn't reflected in the minutes. So if we could amend them.
Thank you. I'm sure we can take that on board. Yeah, thank you. So subject to that amendment, can we have a show of hands for, no, we're going to vote on here.
You can just do it by show of hands.
Show of hands, those approval of the minutes. I think it's unanimous. Lovely. Thank you all very much. I'll just sign those off. Okay. Communications by the Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to draw attention really to some of the events that I've been to since we last met. And there's been some really lovely things to go to, one of which you may well have seen was to recognise World Homelessness Day on the 10th of October. Caring for Communities and People, CCP, held an event at Brickhampton Golf Course where they launched their new Chell Pods idea, which these are self-contained pods which will be located within our town, where people who are sleeping rough on benches or doorways will be able to sleep in one of these pods. It's a really excellent idea. And we saw one, and they're very basic. You know, they've just got a bed and a toilet, but they are heated. So they're not designed for people to live in, but they are just designed for people to have somewhere safe and watertight and dry to sleep in. So it's a great initiative from them. And actually, we had a superb presentation from Nigel Potter and Ewan Wright from CBC. And it's great when the council is working in unison with local charities. A really good success story, and hopefully we'll see those cited fairly soon. I also, on Saturday, went to the Durga Puja, which is a Hindu festival where they celebrate the triumph of good over evil, and how appropriate that is in today's world. But it was a magical occasion, full of colour, full of smiles, and a really joyous occasion to be invited to. We do have a very vibrant Hindu community in our town, and it was great to be invited to that. I also went to St Paul's, where I used to be a councillor many years ago, and to celebrate their next door nature project and hub gardening group in Manchester Street. And this is where the local community, Gloucester Wildlife Trust and CBH as well, have all got together with the local community to develop a gardening hub where they can learn different skills, they can grow food, and they can cook their own food. And it was a really lovely occasion, well attended by the community, lots of children, lots of families. And it was really lovely to go back to St Paul's and actually still speak to one or two people that I knew all those years ago. So that was a lovely event. And finally, I had the great pleasure of going back to NatWest Bank in Bath Road, where I worked years ago. And it is now, I went back there to open the Emmaus charity shop. And Emmaus are another wonderful charity in our county, actually. And it's great that they've now got a presence back in the town. And they work with homeless people, and they provide them with opportunities and education and opportunities to work with them, which is amazing. But of course, they also collect and recycle and upgrade goods for resale. So that was a really nice occasion to go to. So despite all the doom and gloom in our world, there is so much really good stuff going on in the communities and on the ground. So that's one of the joys, I think, of being the mayor. So that's all from me. I now move on to communications by the Leader of the Council, Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Mayor. So following on from that final happy note, as our Mayor has just said, I'd like to start my leader briefings on a very happy note, and that I'm sure you would all share with me in sending huge congratulations to our Chief Executive, Gareth, and his family on the arrival of their second baby, whose name is Rory. So, and that from Community Pride, I think, talking about all the amazing things that various charities and everything, all the organisations out there, one of the things that we as a council, many of you know, is the fact that we have a very small pot of money that we make go a very long way, and this is for the. So from our award-winning green spaces to our cyber aspirations, Cheltenham rightly has a great deal to be proud of. And this month saw the 75th anniversary of the world's longest running literature festival return to our town, with star-studded events taking place between the 4th and 13th of October. And the longevity of this festival is a testament to its great success and to the pride we have in hosting such a fantastic celebration of words this time. But the engagement within our communities is a cornerstone of who we are, and we can be pleased to see this reflected in the local projects and the good causes that will benefit from the Community Pride, the £30,000 pot of Community Pride Fund for this year. This time, 17 Cheltenham projects have been funded with grants from this initiative, and these included a children's art club, a community garden project, cultural schemes, and much more. As I say, we made that money go an awfully long way, and I'm sure that all those who have benefited from the Community Pride Fund this year will make it have a brilliant and positive impact for our town. You will see at the end of our council agenda a briefing note for councillors. It's not something that we discuss, but I did just want to draw your attention to that. And so in the back of that, in the briefing note, that reports back on the progress towards a GP surgery for Cheltenham, which was a requested that was passed by this council in March. Everyone will remember that motion was moved by Councillor Max, the then Councillor Max Whitcomb, should I say, now our new MP, and I know he'll want to hear we are on the case in his absence. The paper reports on really positive engagements between our officers and the local NHS, and it looks forward to a new surgery being delivered as part of the North West Cheltenham development, which should serve approximately 9,500 new residents of that area, ideally combined with a new dental surgery and a pharmacy. It reports on plans to combine the current Yorkley and Overton Park surgeries in a brand new central Cheltenham facility, but Max was clear that the pressure on existing surgeries was too great. So while we set out many challenges, we reiterate in the paper that we want to continue to explore the opportunity of a new surgery that wouldn't just serve new residents or combine existing services, but actually add capacity to our current hard-pressed GP services. I'm sure all colleagues will welcome this briefing, and I'd like to thank Tracy Birkinshaw in particular for her continuing work on this. My final one today is on the sale of the municipal offices. Not everybody around this chamber has been around for a huge number of years, but actually we first started talking about the disposal of the municipal offices back in the 70s. And I'm really pleased to report now that it is now up for sale. Avison Young, our agents, have done a worldwide mailing to all of the viable contacts, and the social media interest has been remarkable, along with the inquiries for access to the sales information. The average level of interest at this point is around 25%. And we always knew that this iconic building had the potential to generate significant interest, which indeed has proved to be the case, as the interest is currently at 40%. I did think about saying towards almost 50%, but I thought, no, I'll report the right figure exactly, because actually that was a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, so it might well have gone up. And what I would say as well, there have been many compliments on the content of our sales information from with potential buyers, telling us that it is one of the most comprehensive they have seen. So my thanks to Avison Young and our project board, but particularly Abby Marshall, for pulling that together. It's a very, very good and long and lengthy detail, which is really important when it comes to people looking at what they could and do and invest in this building. So I guess watch this space, because this is just the start of the journey. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hay. We now then move on to item 7, to receive petitions. I'm not aware of any petitions. So question 7, paragraph 7, public questions. We have 2 public questions. I think the questioner is with us, David. Are you happy to take the questions and answers as read and ask a supplementary?
My supplementary is Gloucestershire County Council and the districts in Gloucestershire should have made a submission to the Department for Local Government and Housing by the 30th of September. I was disappointed to find out that the only mission seems to be for Gloucestershire to work more closely with districts. Well, that's a function of forming a unitary authority, I would have thought. So my question is, Max has raised the issue of possibly joining the West Midlands, the MP. I'm not sure that will go down well with central government as it's a South West county. But has any work gone on in Gloucestershire to joining any of the other options, either with the West of England or with Wiltshire or with the Wiltshire, Dorset and Somerset combined authority proposals? Do we know if any work has been done on this? The submission date, I was told by Secretary of State, was the end of September. We may very well be missing any sort of devolution deal and extra money for Cheltenham, which is what interests me.
Thank you, David. Councillor Hay.
Thank you, Mr. Redwell, for your question. I think I answered your question, but in answer to your supplementary question, absolutely, we haven't missed a trick. And we, as district leaders of all political parties, have worked really closely with the county, because we put in, a while ago, actually, an interest in a devolution deal to be treated as Gloucestershire. So that is the submission that went in originally, and certainly by the deadline, we all agreed, along with the county, that that was the same deal and the expression of interest. It's very difficult because it's a little bit cart before horse, because what the government has said is, tell us, answer these 3 questions, which is, would you be interested? Well, it's 3 very basic questions, but they give you no details, so you don't know what you're saying yes to. So we've said, here's what we would propose, but we've also caveated it, and that, as I say, has been agreed by all the district leaders, cross-party, and with the county. That submission went in that says, we're resubmitting our level 2 deal request. If that is not what this government wants, then we will keep the door open, because we would be interested in hearing more. So until such time as the government decide to tell all of us what they're doing, that's as far as we can go. So we're not left behind. We are absolutely interested in a devolution deal, but we do need to know what that's going to look like.
Thank you. And Tim Harman, let's come forward. Tim, are you happy to take the question and answer as read and ask your supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you.
My supplementary question to Councillor Jeffries is, even given the, if you like, drift in the specification, the overspend is quite gobsmacking, more than double the original figure. Could he say to me whether the project has been subject to an external audit as opposed to an internal audit? And if not, will he consider commissioning one?
Thank you. Cabinet Member, Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you for the question and your supplementary, which I actually don't agree with. Because I think if you actually read the thrust of the answer in the question, the actual fundamental building changed. So it's not an overspend on the original budget. The budget changed with the building design and so forth. So I can't agree with the premise of your supplementary. Therefore, I'm not going to actually follow that up with an answer as to there should be some sort of external look at this. What I will say is that Council on numerous occasions, through the updates and reports that went through this chamber, when himself was a councillor, had detailed explanations of financials and the design as it changed, and all the budgets were approved. I think at the last one, from recollection from my memory, at the last council meeting when we approved the last budget for this building, it hit our investment policy return on investment around 5-point-something%. I can happily provide the figure if needed, but I say I don't actually agree with the thrust of your supplementary, so I'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. We now move on to member questions. Councillor Joy is not with us. So question 1 and also question 2. Question 3. Councillor Davies, would you like to have a supplementary question? No, you're happy with the answer. Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, so that now brings us on to item 9, which is Cheltenham Borough Council and Cheltenham Borough Homes Greenhouse Gas Emission Report 23-24. And I'd like to invite the Cabinet Member for Climate Emergency, Councillor Ian Dobie, to introduce the report. Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I presume that everyone here will be well aware that a climate emergency was declared by this council in 2019, and that earlier this year, CBC published a reviewed, refined and updated climate emergency action plan, detailing the framework to be adopted towards becoming net zero by 2030. Reports such as the one you have before you today are fundamental to ensuring that this council is effectively and transparently monitoring and reporting on organisational progress towards our agreed goal. This comprehensive and detailed annual carbon emissions report to Council aims to show progress made by Cheltenham Borough Homes and Cheltenham Borough Council towards achieving net zero targets set for these 2 organisations, which are, of course, as we all know, 1 now. The methodology employed in measuring emissions and hence progress makes use of national best practice. Indeed, I should like to take this opportunity to recognise the superb work of Debbie Baker, a nationally recognised, important and influential expert who Cheltenham Borough Council employed as a consultant to ensure excellence in this area. Now, Debbie is about to leave us in the next few days, but she has left behind a full and well-motivated climate change team, two of whom are sitting at the back here, who are doing a fine and professional job. Now, back to the report. As you'll see from tables 1 and 2, a good progress is being made in the areas over which we have direct control, which are known as Scope 1 and Scope 2. In fact, as an example, our emissions related to fossil fuel use have reduced by 18% compared to last year. Other highlights include further progress on decarbonising our vehicle fleet and that of Yubico. Measures to make our buildings and services more energy efficient. For example, investing in heat retention pool covers at the leisure centre. Better measurement of energy use through improved building management systems. Judicious energy generation projects, for example, solar panels, again at the leisure centre as an example. Continuing bids to central government for funding to increase the energy efficiency of our buildings from the National Social Housing Fund. And let's not forget, besides helping to reduce global warming, achieving our net zero ambitions will also play a key role in reducing this council's overheads and thus ensuring the long-term financial stability of Cheltenham Borough Council and its services. We will continue to drive further energy efficiency. I seek Council's endorsement of this report and its support for the 4 recommendations, which are listed on page 13 of the report you have in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Excuse me. Thank you for your report. We'll now move to member questions, and can I just ask members to try and keep their questions related to the item and not the whole subject of the climate emergency, and that'll be good. So anybody have any questions for the Cabinet member? Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Dorby, for introducing the report. It's a really comprehensive document, and I wanted to start by thanking the officers for preparing it. I went back and found the baseline report from 2019-2020, and it's 3 pages, and this one is a lot longer, so it's great to see, how much our reporting has improved. I've only got 2 questions. So the report states that the figures within it will be audited. Will this be an external audit, and will it be available for reading once it's been concluded, is my first question. The second question is linked to one of the recommendations in the report, which is linked to Scope 3 emissions and planning to reduce these emissions by engaging with contractors. Seems like a really good and necessary step, as our Scope 3 emissions make up 90% of our total emissions. Alongside this, the report states, when talking about Scope 3 emissions, that the organisation has less direct control over these sorts of emissions, but that there are some things the council can do to influence these emissions, such as business travel, water usage and staff commuting. Similarly, at the end of the CBH section of the report, it says that the Scope 2 emissions could be reduced by encouraging behavioural changes. So my second question is there a plan in place for reductions in these Scope 2 and 3 emissions relating to behavioural changes? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. To take the second question first, yes, we do have a plan in place, and indeed it will be led by my officers here, my team, to influence those things. And Maisie may want to talk about that, but I asked her to talk specifically about the first of your questions, which is about internal or external audit. It's a very relevant question, because I want to reassure you and indeed reassure the council that we are doing this by the book. We're doing this transparently, as I've already said. So, Maisie, would you like to say something about the way that the report is going to be audited internally or externally? Can I just say that Maisie McCann is our Climate Emergency Officer, for those who haven't met her.
Hi, so this will be the first year the carbon report will be audited, and it will be done by Swap Auditing, which is the internal auditing organisation which is shared within the Public Council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more member questions? Councillor Chelin.
Yes, thank you very much. One of my questions also relates to recommendation 4. I've just got 2 questions. In relation to recommendation 4, appreciate that scope 3 supply chain emissions are more difficult and more out of our control. But considering that we share some of those services with other councils, I was wondering to what extent we are or can work with those other councils when we're looking at services and their emissions. The second question is regarding recommendation 2, and it mentions a lack of success in the funding bid. And I was just wondering, why was that? What have we learned from that, and how will that help us in future funding bids for similar funding? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chelin. On the first of your questions, can I assure you that there are structures in place to ensure that we are working together with our neighbouring councils, and indeed with the county council as well, who chair the overarching meeting. I went to one just 2 weeks ago, and we take it in turns to chair that. So although formally the county council has the lead on all of this, actually, nevertheless, we're quite democratic in ensuring that the 6 councils, district councils from within the council within the county have their opportunity. With regard to your second question, this, and my officers know a little bit more about this. First of all, I was very annoyed about this, and I'll give you some background. It was about heat networks. The idea of a heat network is that you take the excess heat from maybe an organisation or an institution, and you don't waste that heat. And I can give you some examples of how, at the moment, it just goes literally up into the air, even in Cheltenham. Instead, you translate it into piped heat, which could support a network, maybe a house in multiple occupancy, or indeed a housing estate of social houses. And we were invited at very short notice by the new government, and this is in line with the practice, sadly, of the old government, to bid at very, very short notice. I mean, I'm talking about a matter of weeks to put together a bid to convince them to hand out our money. And every other council in the country was being asked to do this. So this is sort of the begging bowl approach, which is the one that was adopted by the former government, and sadly it's still continuing at the moment. But to be fair, I believe even within the Labour Party, people are challenging this approach as not being the right one, or even a respectful one towards local government. And the message that we received back, and that I repeated to you, was that even before the very short date, and I'm talking about weeks now, when the competition, this cutthroat competition, which sets councils versus councils, was due to be finished, they had spent all the money. So it was done on a first come, first distributed basis, even before the assessments had been made. And this was particularly so annoying. It's not only unfair, but I think that our bid, which we had put together, which included local businesses supporting our bid, we were pretty certain we would have a good case, but we needed the money to develop the case, and that's what this call for bids was about, getting money to develop the cases for heat networks. I thought it was a very good case, and the message we got back, which was from, to be fair, a fairly junior member of the relevant ministry, indicated, sorry, all the money's gone, there's no point now. I was so angry about it, and indeed I spoke with Max Wilkinson MP, our MP, and as you know, he was the person really behind the declaration of an emergency, a climate emergency back in 2009, and he still cares a great deal about it. And he said that we could protest about this. He would actually table a parliamentary question to challenge the relevant ministry about the way we had been treated in this disrespectful way. But as it happened, after some follow-up by my staff, it turns out there was a bit of a misunderstanding, a bit of Chinese whispers, if you like, about the response that had been sent by this junior officer. And in fact, the competition had not closed. What had happened is they'd had far more bids than the money that was available, but they hadn't actually decided the results of the competition. So we were still in with a chance. But I tell you this rather long-winded story, but just to give you an impression of how we are pushing all the time for government money, for climate emergency goals. But it is very frustrating, and this will be true of every council in this country, that central government is treating local government in this way, where we have to go with our begging bowls for money and be treated to a fairly high-handed attitude. And I know that the organisations that represent us, such as the Local Government Association, is not happy about this either. So I'm hopeful that as this government beds in and gets over its initial teething problems, that they will come up with a more grown-up and, frankly, fair way of doing it. Because if there is money to be dispersed, believe you me, we will be bidding for it. We've got a great team here, and I'm very confident that if there's any chance of us getting the funding we need to take forward a plan that is already on the table, then we will be pursuing it very vigorously. So thank you for asking me the question.
Thank you for that very helpful answer, actually. And it is so frustrating for all local authorities, all the time and money that is spent on these bids. Councillor Pinniger.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for progress made, and it's a great report, so thanks for that. My question is based on my weekend where I've been to the Literature Festival in Cheltenham, and I've seen a couple of people who've talked about the climate crisis, Dale Vince and Hannah Ritchie in particular. And they say very clearly that there are three strands to our major emissions, which are energy, transport and food. We are not tackling food. I look back at the strategy. I was wondering what your opinion was that and how we might introduce that moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor. Food, no, in terms of our own carbon footprint as a council, food, you're right. I mean, maybe we need to think a little bit more about this. What I would say, in light of my previous responsibility for our green spaces, the Clean and Green team, our allotments are doing a great job. And indeed, there's a link between our allotments and our food banks as well. So we're trying to make the most of our allotments for our community. In terms of the other two elements that you mentioned, that's transport and energy. Well, it's all in the report, isn't it? So we are all over that. But we'll look to see what we can do on the question of food and see whether that can be included in our approach to recording and hopefully reducing our carbon footprint. So thank you for that point.
Any other member? Okay, so we'll now move on to the debate. Anyone would like to kick off the debate? Councillor Allen, thank you.
Firstly, I'd say thank you to Councillor Dobie and the team for preparing such a thorough report, and to echo the comments made across the benches from Councillor Davies. It was very, very welcome to see that this is a marked improvement on the report from what we could see 2019. I want to say thank you also to the team for taking the time to respond to the questions I put forward, and admittedly at quite a late stage in the night yesterday, and for providing such not only a thorough response, but also a measured response. And it shows that the team is taking into account not only the scope, but also the emergency of the crisis. And I think I want to echo the comments firstly of which another member raised with me, which is that, the rise in Scope 3 emissions that we see. And firstly, thank you for the honesty and clarity with which these were reported. But these largely, as we know, come down to better intelligence, and more understanding of how our Scope 3 emissions are produced. Now, the three questions that I raised, the first two were answered sufficiently regarding the provision of renewable energy in planning and improvements with the grid. So I won't go into too much detail there just because they lie, to be honest, outside the scope of the report. The third thing I do want to raise with Council is the ability to bring forward specific reports regarding our individual assets. And I hope that with this report and its recommendations being a firm bedrock, with the support of the Council for this report today, we can go forward into committees such as ONS, scrutinising further reports on our assets and providing further detailed recommendations for how we can fix the climate emergency and also help CBC help with the Scope 3 emissions as well, because as we know, these are nascent findings and it'd be great to see further progress that we can make on these in future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just like to say thank you ever so much, Councillor Doby and officers, for this very, very thorough report, and to note the challenges of collecting really good, strong data for Scope 3 emissions. I'm aware that some organisations, especially of the larger size, find it really, really challenging to get access to this type of information. So hats off to CBC for actually having such great information already at our fingertips, and now it's a matter of beating that number down. And then also, as the report highlights, the challenges we're facing with Scope 2 emissions and the reliance that we have on the decarbonisation of the grid. And I think that's a really big challenge this new government will have in making sure that adequate funding goes into our infrastructure, not only to support the generation of required clean, renewable fuels, but also to make sure that it reaches every pocket of England and the United Kingdom so that we're able to rely less heavily on fossil fuels and gas. But hats off to your great report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Doby, would you like to sum up and then move? Thank you.
I must say it's been very encouraging to see the unanimity across the Council's chamber in supporting this excellent report, and by implication also supporting our approach on getting towards net zero. I would like to say that although Debbie Baker, our national expert who's helped us to get to this point, is going, we've now got a full climate emergency team now. We've got a vision, if you like, a route map or a map to show where we're going to, and we're now well and truly launched on that voyage. Just to continue the metaphor, really, I'm very confident in the staff that we have got now, and if I may say, in their presence, some of the staff that we have got in our team have preferred to work here in Cheltenham for the Borough Council than other offers that they have had. And it says something about this council that we're attracting really talented people, because they can see we are serious and we are professional about our commitment to reaching net zero. And I just thank the council for the support that they provided today.
Thank you. So we'll move to the electronic vote.
Yeah, carried unanimously.
That's unanimous. Fantastic. Thank you all very much indeed. So now we move on to notices of motion, and we have motion A, Historic Cheltenham and the Public Realm, proposed by Councillor Tuke and seconded by Councillor Andrews. Councillor Tuke, you have up to 10 minutes to present your motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At Cheltenham's Wilson Gallery, we're really lucky to have an inspirational arts and crafts collection. The arts and crafts movement was led by William Morris, the Victorian visionary, who believed that everyday beauty was was a right for all of us. He felt that art and beauty should not exist just in so-called fine arts, for example, painting and sculptures, but in works of craftsmanship and design. Art should be in our furniture, our fabrics, our buildings, and our streets. I do not want art for a few more than education for a few or freedom for a few, he proclaimed. Because he was a socialist, Morris believed that everyday beauty was a right for every human being. I would also argue that the way things look is a fundamental quality of life and a quality issue. Everyone has a right to gain pleasure from shared spaces, and councils have a duty to ensure that those shared spaces, or civic realms, give visual pleasure whenever possible. Cheltenham is beautiful, really beautiful. There is a danger that because we live in the town and see that beauty every day, we take it for granted. The people who visit this town see it, though, and love it. In 2022, we welcomed 2 million visitors who contributed 164 million to the local economy. Of course, they came here for our cultural and horse racing festivals, as well as our shops and restaurants. But to quote Time Out in 2018, this plummy place has beauty and brains, darling. Cheltenham is unique and precious. Within Cheltenham Borough, there are 2,602 listed buildings, of which 5 are Grade 1, 387 are Grade 2 star, and 2,210 are Grade 2. We also have an additional 450 buildings, which, whilst not statutorily listed, are locally identified as being of historic interest. For context, glorious Gloucester only has 660 listed buildings, about 25% of what we have. Outstanding Oxford, the city that applied to be a World Heritage Site, only has 1,500 listed buildings, 58% of what we have. And wonderful Worcester only has 1,000 listed buildings, 38% of what we have. We also have 7 precious conservation areas adding up to 1,700 acres. These conservation areas are, of course, loved by visitors, but they are also neighbourhoods in which Cheltonians live, and many of them are not in the town centre. In writing this motion, I was very impressed by the Streets for All report produced by Historic England. In their advice for highway and public realm works in historic places, the report states, "It is not only fine buildings that give England's historic towns and villages their special character. Just as important are their public spaces, the streets and paths through which people move, and the squares and precincts in which they connect." The report makes it clear that the public realm is not just defined by its architecture, it is also defined by the streets and pavements, which frame the architecture, because, as the report says, paving materials are the platform of the built environment. They form the plinth on which buildings are set, and the surfaces on which people and traffic interact. England has a rich tradition of paving materials and methods. This motion seeks to halt immediately the passage of the ever-creeping asphalt on our pavements in our most precious heritage contexts. In the medium and longer terms, though, I would like to encourage a deeper conversation about what defines Cheltenham's history, craftsmanship, and materials, and how to invest to defend and then enhance our outside spaces. To quote Historic England's Streets for All again, "Studies of flourishing communities, be they large towns or small villages, show a quantifiable relationship between economic success and the quality of the public realm. Increasingly, towns have to compete with each other for business. It is well known that physical appearance is a critical factor in attracting investments and visitors. Cheltenham's shops compete with Gloucester's shops and Tewkesbury's shops, and the existential threat of global online retailers who pay limited corporation tax and business rates. Our shops need all the help they can get. I represent Pittville and I love my ward. Before I even became a councillor, I started to campaign for the pavements of my neighbourhood. I listened to the arguments for why black asphalt needed to replace paving stones in stunning Clarence Square and Wellington Square, but I couldn't make sense of them. Unmaintained paving stones pushed up by tree roots were sometimes trip hazards for residents, but residents were also tripping over brittle and buckled black asphalt. The default health and safety argument for using asphalt just didn't wash. More than this, though, I've never had any recognition from highways that they should care for the pavements in a way which takes into account the civic realm context at all. Never has there been a discussion about what materials should be used to repair or replace paving stones, or how uneven surfaces could be flattened or levelled. Recently, some progress to improve our pavements has been made, and I have to give credit to our MP, Max Wilkinson, and the Civic Society, of which I am a member, for this campaign. GC has agreed that utilities should make good any damage they've done to the pavements as swiftly as possible and not leave asphalt where there used to be paving stones. GCC claimed to have tightened the rules. However, the implementation of pre-existing rules to make good the damage to the pavements should have been a given. GCC always had responsibility for the work done by the utilities, and it is not an achievement to take that responsibility fully and seriously. On the GCC website, it states indignantly, when utility companies complete work on pavements, they often make the area safe with temporary repairs that do not match the paving stones of the street and cause an eyesore. To be frank, I'm gobsmacked by this criticism of utility companies. GCC regularly creates eyesores by using asphalt on pavements which does not match with the paving stones. This motion hopes to stop this practice altogether next to listed buildings and in conservation areas. An eyesore is an eyesore, regardless of whether it was created by a utility company or GCC. One final quote from William Morris. The past is not dead. It is living in us and will be alive in the future, which we are now helping to make. GCC, for the sake of the past, the present, and the future, please give our precious pavements the love they deserve. I urge you all to support this motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tu. Councillor Andrews, did you want to speak now? Yep. We will second the motion.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Tuck for bringing this motion forward. It's very important that when we dig up our pavement, we replace them like for like. It's what any rational person would expect. And although legally speaking, they've got 6 months to do it, it should be done almost instantaneously. Cheltenham's buildings are magnificent, and for any tourist it is a case of do look up, because if you look down it doesn't look quite so impressive. And of course County Council, as you've mentioned, did have responsibility for the Strand, and as many of us are aware, they did actually misplace many of the paving stones that they had in stock for those. I hope they haven't gone to waste and there are some swish new patios in the county somewhere. But in essence, everything you've said cannot be argued with, and I'm happy to second this motion.
I think you should perhaps just withdraw that comment about the patios. Could you just do that for us?
Sorry?
Would you mind just withdrawing that rather derogatory comment about patios?
Okay, then I'll withdraw that comment.
Thank you. Any other members would like to contribute? Councillor Barrell, then Councillor Horwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Councillor Tuke
for bringing this motion. I think all of us realise how lucky we are to live in such a beautiful town. I mean, it's important for us as residents, for our mental health, just going for a walk, to be able to appreciate all the beauty. And it's surprising how, something low down, it's sort of, the black asphalt, it just sort of catches your eye, and it somehow spoils the enjoyment of it all. Thank you for that. But I think it's also important for things such as tourism. I mean, we've just had a wonderful literature festival. So many people coming to the town, and walking around the town is an enjoyment and attraction for them and for businesses in general. So, thank you very much for bringing this to our notice. Thank you.
Councillor Horwood, then Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to strongly support this motion and really thank Councillor Took and Councillor Andrews for bringing it forward. I'm glad it sets out a collaborative approach in the motion and talks about community partners. In my last cabinet portfolio, I had regular engagement with the Civic Society, and I should declare also for transparency, I'm also a member of the Civic Society, and I think it has a huge amount to offer. We didn't always 100% see eye to eye, especially after some of their newsletter headlines, but that's democracy, and it's good to have vibrant civil society in any town. And in my current portfolio, I have regular engagement with the Business Improvement District, the Cheltenham BID, who they've got a very energetic new chief exec in Fran Inman, and they are also clearly very passionate about improving the town centre. And I think one of the most important things Councillor Took said in his speech was talking about how economics is beginning to work at local level these days. In an era when you can shop for almost anything online, when you can see almost anything online, when you can make investment decisions and conduct business online, actually for a town at local level to win shoppers and visitors and investors, you need to offer something a bit different. You need to offer a really positive experience of coming to that town. And that emphasis on experience is something that we have got, I was about to say in spades, maybe that's the wrong phrase to use in the context of asphalt, but we've certainly got a very positive experience in the beauty of the architecture, all the events and the amazing things like the Literature Festival that you, the leader referred to earlier and Mayor referred to as well. And in offering that very positive experience, that is the way we will build economic development in this town going forward. And I think it's a really important thing to emphasise. The public are concerned about this issue. It's been neglected. It's been not handled well at county level. And I think Councillor Took and Councillor Andrews are quite right to highlight it and have given us a very good action plan going forward. So I strongly support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I support this really well, but I think we get some of the points that we look at the town. People walk around outside the town on pavements that are covered in grass, potholes, the black stuff all crumbling up. And when you ask for comments to be done or things to be done, it's just pushed to a side and you're left just wondering what you've got to do to get these sort of things repaired. I've been trying for the best time of my times as a councillor to get a pavement sorted out in Prestbury, and I'm still waiting. Every time I ask, oh, give me a number and thing, and when you check up, oh, it's on a list, we've got to do this. And there's always an excuse instead of let's get it done, let's make Cheltenham look what Cheltenham is. A beautiful, beautiful town with wonderful people and beautiful architecture. So I'm in full support of your President, Mr. Tonks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Trailford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to Councillor Took and Councillor Andrews for this motion. From a councillor perspective, most of our ward falls within the Central Conservation Area and includes 4 of the character areas as part of this, including a bit of Pittville. And residents of conservation areas have to follow rules and requirements with their properties. You know, if we want to change the windows or however the house looks and all of these extra things that we have to follow these rules. but the county council and the utilities companies turn up and leave the pavements in complete disarray. And I don't think that's fair nor acceptable. So I welcome this motion for how it may improve the public realm there and across our town. As a cabinet member as well, I also welcome this motion. For example, the worse the state of the pavements, the harder it is to crack down on things like the weeds, because the more cracks there are in the things, the more poorly they repair the pavements, the more space there is for weeds to grow, the more resource we have to divert to that work, which takes away from all the other good things we do as a council. And as a council, alongside our volunteers and friends group, we put a lot of work into our award-winning parks and gardens, as well as all of our other responsibilities within the public realm. And this is despite extremely limited resources and, frankly, a tiny share of the council tax that residents pay. So I would expect the county council, you know, with the overwhelmingly large majority of that council tax that people pay, to invest an equal effort in their responsibilities and their areas within the public realm, such as the pavements and the streets, especially as these are so impactful on both residents going about their day-to-day lives, but also the visitors and their experiences when they come to our lovely town. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pinniger?
Thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about St Mark's and the Poets Conservation Area. I didn't actually believe that anything could be done apart from replacing paving slabs with tarmac around the tree roots. And so I really appreciate the point that Councillor Took made about the tarmac actually being a trip hazard just as much as the paving slabs. And in previous conversations with Councillor Took, he has pointed out that there are methods and mechanisms for actually lowering tree roots so that paving can be put back. I wanted to make that point. Yeah, it was really only since the County Council did Grimwade Close in St Mark's that I realised that they can actually do paving. They've done a beautiful job. It's only a short close, and they finished just before the sinkhole opened up. But yes, the main point I really liked from what Councillor Took was saying was that the GCC highways should be having a dialogue with us about how these things can be fixed and the best way to go about it. And that doesn't cost, but it would mean that we get the satisfaction that we need, hopefully. And finally, I wanted to mention that I am one of the now 4 walking and cycling champions. And if we could all get together at some point and discuss this, that would be very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not going to wax lyrical as colleagues have eloquently shown their support for this motion, as I will equally support the motion. But I just wanted to point out a couple of blindingly, obviously, common sense things which I think the County Council seem to miss. Firstly, you walk 100 yards away from this building, which is a listed building in itself, to the promenade. And I can count probably, I don't know, 15 black bits of tarmac, which is set in a beautifully York stone promenade. Why? If they've had to dig up that paving slab, that York stone, which actually is beautiful, it's a nice green tinge to it, where's it gone? Where's that actual stone gone? It must be put somewhere. There must be a reason it can't go back down again. It's blooming common sense. So I really support the motion, the fact that it's just, some of it is really just common sense. I'd also like to mention one other thing, and that's where I'm really pleased you mentioned the motion around near listed buildings, because not a lot of people will know that Springbank has 2 of those listed buildings that we have in Cheltenham. And trying to get the County Council to understand the importance of those buildings in relation to the footpath outside is just, well, it's just beyond, you know, when you've got the conservation area that you're battling with here. So it's really important, the setting of our listed buildings, so wholeheartedly support the motion. And hopefully some of the common sense approach will appear if we can get them to work more collaboratively with us. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Chelin, then Councillor Harvey.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make a brief comment. We've talked about the aesthetics and we've talked about the economics, and I just wanted to add about the equalities issues and even pavements. I've got quite a lot of residents who've mentioned to me in Park Ward either unsure on their feet and trying to negotiate the tricky pavements, or in wheelchairs, and do find it quite difficult sometimes when there have been repairs that aren't good, or if there are no repairs at all, basically. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, then Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. As I'm no longer employed by English Heritage, I can have this comment to make, I think. I did manage a national monument, a Grade 1 national monument, for 4 years. So I'm absolutely delighted that my colleagues in Historic England's work is being taken forward with this motion, because they'll be grateful because it's been used. But I wouldn't want anybody outside of this chamber to think that sitting councillors and the Cabinet don't make representation to GCC for our pavements and our roads, because we do all the time. This is just another arrow to our bow to make the point that there is actually national legislation, national statutory legislation from Historic England that support us in this. So our officers try their best to have a good relationship with GCC officers. Not sure where that falls down. We're always blamed, but I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's not for us to try and buy our officers. So I think this is marvellous. Absolutely, it's a well-written motion. It's fantastic that national assets like Historic England, my former colleagues, are being drawn into this. And I will fully support the motion and applaud both Councillors Took and Andrews for bringing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
We've mentioned tourists, we've mentioned the economy, and Councillor there also mentioned equality. And nobody has actually, I think, mentioned how important it is for people at the bottom of the social and economic scale to also have the right to equality in the environment of their town. And I think we actually have a duty to maintain our public spaces almost as a levelling up thing. You know, if you're going home to a grotty house that you can't afford to maintain, at least when you walk down the prom, you should be able to feel equal as a citizen of Cheltenham to everybody else. And I just wanted to make that point that, you know, that I think that is also a valid point for maintaining these spaces. I think it's a great motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say a few words, but I will obviously call other councillors as well. And essentially, Councillor Chu, you should be congratulated on this motion and your speech, which was superb. And the motion, the underlying feeling behind the motion is pride in our town. That's what it all is about. We are all incredibly proud of our town. And when I, as mayor and former mayors, receive visitors and they comment about the state of our roads and pavements, you know, it does bring it home to you, actually, that this is a real fact. It is, people are expecting to come into the best preserved Regency town in the country, and they are expecting to see decent public realm, and we don't have that. And so this is the beginning of a campaign which has been going on for years to persuade the county council to adopt a far more proactive, responsible and sensitive approach to repairs of pavements and roads. And they've started to address that with the latest change on utilities. But the proof of that will be in the eating, because actually I don't believe they are properly auditing repairs that are carried out. Most repairs aren't checked. The quality of repairs is appalling. So they need to be making sure that every single utility repair is carried out properly and in the right surface material and within that 6 months. And we'll see whether that happens. We also need to make sure that they are actually going to carry out what they preach, so that when they do repairs, as Councillor Chuk said, they actually reinstate as they found it before. But it is all down to quality. And I think we just need to keep up the campaign. We just need to keep complaining and raising the profile. The Civic Society, I think, have done a sterling job and should be congratulated. But we have too. All of us as individuals have brought these issues up time and time again, both the Borough Council and County Council. And so this is a start. They are listening, and let's hope we can see further improvements and further change. It's great they've actually started. I noticed in the High Street last week, some of the tarmac's been replaced with slabs. The Strand is going to be done in January. So things are starting to happen. But why has it taken so long to get to this stage? We need to keep the pressure up. Thank you. I then have Councillor Wheeler, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I wasn't intending to speak, but a number of things that have said have encouraged me to say something. Without going into too much detail, I can remember back in the 60s, early 70s, I had an uncle that used to visit us from London when we lived in Micheldean. And the one thing he always had to do was to come into Cheltenham to buy the sausages for Sunday breakfast. Could have bought them in Micheldean, could have bought them in Gloucester, but he insisted on coming to Cheltenham because Cheltenham was a special place. But that's how Cheltenham was, and that's how I feel Cheltenham should be today. But leaving that to one side, I think Councillor Jeffries made the point about the York stone pavements. What happens when they take those up and why weren't they put back? Similar when I was on the county council, and I will put my hand up to the fact that I was relatively happy to see many of the paving slabs taken up in Ben Hall and replaced with tarmac. But I wanted it done in a sympathetic way, not just a few broken ones replaced so we had this checkerboard, but it was done sympathetically so it looked better. For the most part, that was done well. So I asked the question and never really got an answer. Where did the broken ones, fine, that they need to be ditched, but what happened to all the paving slabs that were in good condition? I suspect that the easiest thing to do would be to dump them. The right thing would have been to use those slabs elsewhere when someone had a broken slab that wanted replacing. So where did they go? And yes, I'll come to the thrust of my being. Also, very recently, one of the utility companies, Openreach, I believe it was laying cable in my patch in Hester's Way. And I watched them digging their trench, laying the cable, or the conduit at least, and I'm reliably informed by my son, who's a geotechnical engineer, backfill should be with new material, not the material dug out. They were simply putting back the old material which, because some of it was grass verge, they were actually putting back soil into the hole, and even bits of turf were going back and then tarmacked over the top. I did challenge them at the time and was told that they were allowed to do this. I passed the information along to Highways. I took photographs of it.
You've used your 3 minutes.
Yes,
okay.
Almost finished.
Thank you.
And I got absolutely no response at all. What I'm saying is, whether it's a utility company or whether it's GCC, I would expect GCC to follow up on these things to make sure that repairs are done properly and not just allow whoever to do the job and not finish properly.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to echo a lot of the sentiments that have already been expressed. Thank you, Councillor Tuck and Councillor Andrews, for introducing this motion. I feel like the asphalt does appear as a bit of an eyesore, and in my own ward we've had a lot of issues with trying to get potholes repaired and paving slabs repaired, and if we can put something in place to sort of push this in front of listed buildings, anything to sort of push the county council to start implementing those repairs, then hopefully this will start something bigger that will allow, you know, more equality and equity across all of our wards. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'll ask Councillor Tuke to sum up. Councillor Tuke, over to you.
So I don't think I'm going to sum up all the points because there are quite a lot of them actually. But something I did want to pick up on was Councillor Foster's point. William Morris was a socialist, and his view that beauty should be supported came from his socialism. And, you know, we tend to think of heritage issues perhaps as being of the right. I profoundly don't think that's the case. I'm informed by William Morris's views as someone who's left of centre. I'm also informed by the fact that as a liberal, I believe in freedom from poverty. And actually freedom from poverty, of course, is economic, of course it is. But freedom from poverty is freedom from poverty of experience or poverty of beauty or all those other things that the rest of us take for, you know, granted. I also thought the point that was made by Councillor Telford was a particularly good point. We ask a lot of our residents in this town, many of whom live in conservation areas, and a sizable number of whom live in listed buildings. Those buildings are expensive to look after. And, you know, quite rightly, we place strong strictures on what they can and cannot do. Because we ask that of our residents, it's not unreasonable to ask the same things of our county council in terms of supporting those areas. That's probably all I've got to say in terms of summing up, but thank you for your support.
You just switch off your mic, please. Thank you. So if we move to the electronic votes, please. Hopefully this will be unanimous. We'll see. Yep, done. Excellent, that's unanimous. Thank you all very much. Item 11, any other items the Mayor determines as urgent? There are none. And 12 is just the note, the briefing note about GP surgery provision in the town. So thank you all very much for your attendance this afternoon, and the meeting is closed. Thank you.